Folks, it's real. Climate change is happening. Scientists agree. The evidence is overwhelming, and the consequences are becoming more apparent every day. But in 2016, America elected a president who seemed to think climate change was a hoax. A president who rolled back environmental regulations and pulled out of the Paris Agreement. This decision sent shockwaves around the world. The Paris Agreement was a landmark accord, a global commitment to combat climate change. By withdrawing, the United States not only abandoned its leadership role, but also jeopardized the collective efforts of the international community. A president who, frankly, made the whole situation a hell of a lot worse. The rollback of environmental protections and the promotion of fossil fuels over renewable energy sources set us back years in the fight against climate change. The damage done during this period will take a long time to repair, because while Trump was busy tweeting about how climate change was a Chinese hoax, the rest of the world was getting to work. Countries reaffirmed their commitments to reducing emissions, investing in renewable energy, and protecting natural resources. The global community recognized that the fight against climate change transcends political boundaries and requires collective action. The election of Donald Trump was a major setback for the fight against climate change. His administration's policies directly contributed to increased carbon emissions and environmental degradation. The promotion of fossil fuels over renewable energy sources hindered progress and exacerbated the climate crisis. States, cities, and businesses across America had to step up to fill the void left by the federal government. Innovative solutions and sustainable practices are being implemented at the local level, proving that leadership can come from anywhere. The transition to a green economy is not just a necessity, it's an opportunity for growth and innovation. And international leaders reaffirmed their commitment to the Paris Agreement even without the United States. The global resolve to tackle climate change remains strong, and new alliances are being formed to drive progress. The spirit of cooperation and shared responsibility is more important than ever. The fight for our planet's future continues. But it's a fight we can't afford to lose. The stakes are too high, and the consequences of failure are too dire. We must come together, as individuals, communities, and nations, to protect our planet and ensure a sustainable future for all. The time for action is now, and every effort counts. Let's rise to the challenge and make a difference. Now, let's talk about Trump's environmental record. It's not good, folks. It's really not good. In fact, it's so concerning that it has drawn criticism from environmentalists, scientists, and even some politicians across the globe. The impact of his policies has been felt far and wide, affecting not just the United States, but the entire planet. In fact, it's so bad, it makes you wonder if he's ever even seen a tree that wasn't on a golf course. His administration's approach to environmental issues seemed almost dismissive, as if the natural world was nothing more than a backdrop for his personal and political ambitions. From day one, Trump made it clear that he had no interest in addressing climate change. His stance was evident in his speeches, his tweets, and most importantly, his policies. He often referred to climate change as a hoax and showed a blatant disregard for scientific consensus. He appointed climate change deniers to key positions in his administration. These individuals, who were supposed to protect the environment, instead worked to dismantle the very regulations that were designed to safeguard it. This move was not just controversial, it was catastrophic for environmental protection efforts. He rolled back dozens of environmental regulations, including rules on air and water pollution. These rollbacks were often done under the guise of reducing red tape and promoting economic growth. But the real cost was to the environment and public health. And of course, he famously withdrew the United States from the Paris Agreement, the landmark international agreement to combat climate change. This decision isolated the U.S. from the global community and undermined international efforts to address a crisis that affects us all. Trump's justification for these actions was always the same. He claimed that environmental regulations were bad for the economy. He argued that these rules stifled business growth and led to job losses, a narrative that resonated with many of his supporters. He claimed that environmental regulations were bad for the economy. He said that they were killing jobs and making America less competitive. However, this perspective ignored the long-term economic benefits of a healthy environment and the growing green economy. He said that they were killing jobs and making America less competitive. But the truth is, these regulations were put in place to protect our health and our environment. They were designed to ensure that industries operated responsibly and sustainably. But the truth is, these regulations were put in place to protect our health and our environment. They were designed to ensure that we have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and a livable planet for future generations. Ignoring these protections puts everyone at risk, especially the most vulnerable among us. They were designed to ensure that we have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and a livable planet for future generations. The rollback of these regulations has had immediate and severe consequences, from increased pollution to the acceleration of climate change. Trump's decision to ignore the science and put the interests of polluters ahead of the American people was not only short-sighted, it was downright dangerous. The long-term effects of his policies will be felt for years to come, and it will take a concerted effort to undo the damage and steer the country back towards a sustainable future. Okay, so we know Trump wasn't a fan of environmental protection. His administration rolled back numerous regulations aimed at safeguarding our natural resources and reducing pollution. But what did the experts have to say about his policies? The scientific community, which has long been a guardian of factual information and evidence-based recommendations, was vocal in its disapproval. Well, to put it mildly, they were freaking out. The level of concern was unprecedented, with many scientists feeling that years of progress were being undone. Climate scientists warned that Trump's actions would have dire consequences for the planet. They emphasized that the rollback of environmental protections would accelerate the pace of climate change. They pointed out that the Earth is already experiencing the effects of climate change, from rising sea levels to more extreme weather events. These phenomena are not just future threats. They are happening now and affecting millions of lives. And they warned that these effects would only get worse if we didn't take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The scientific consensus is clear. Immediate and sustained efforts are needed to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. Economists also sounded the alarm, arguing that the costs of inaction on climate change would far outweigh the costs of taking action. They highlighted the economic benefits of transitioning to a green economy, including job creation and energy independence. They pointed out that climate change is already costing the global economy billions of dollars each year in damages from extreme weather events. The financial toll is staggering, affecting everything from infrastructure to agriculture. And they warned that these costs would only continue to rise in the future. Without significant action, the economic burden will become increasingly unsustainable, impacting both developed and developing nations. Even some members of the business community spoke out against Trump's environmental policies. Forward-thinking business leaders recognized that sustainable practices are not just ethical, but also profitable in the long run. They argued that investing in clean energy and taking action on climate change was not only the right thing to do for the planet, but also good for business. Renewable energy sources like solar and wind are becoming increasingly cost-effective and can drive economic growth. The message from the experts was clear. Trump's policies were a threat to our health, our economy, and our planet. Ignoring the scientific consensus on climate change not only jeopardizes our environment, but also our future prosperity and well-being. Now, you might think that with Trump pulling out of the Paris Agreement and generally acting like a bull in a china shop when it came to climate change, the rest of the world would have followed suit. But here's the thing. They didn't. In fact, Trump's actions seem to have the opposite effect. World leaders from Europe to Asia condemned Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. They reaffirmed their commitment to the agreement and pledged to continue taking action on climate change, with or without the United States. Some countries even saw an opportunity in Trump's retreat from climate action. China, for example, positioned itself as a global leader on climate change, investing heavily in renewable energy and promoting itself as a responsible global citizen. The point is, folks, the world didn't end when Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement. It kept spinning, and the fight against climate change continued, even without the United States leading the way. Okay, so we've talked about the science, the politics, and the international response to Trump's climate policies. But what about the real-world impacts? What does climate change actually look like? Well, folks, it looks like more extreme weather events. It looks like stronger hurricanes, more intense droughts, and more frequent wildfires. It looks like rising sea levels swallowing up coastal communities. It looks like mass migrations of people displaced by climate change. We're already seeing these impacts today, and they're only going to get worse in the future. In 2017, for example, the United States experienced a record-breaking hurricane season, with 3 major hurricanes making landfall. The following year, California was ravaged by the deadliest and most destructive wildfires in the state's history. These events are a stark reminder that climate change is not some distant threat. It's happening now, and it's affecting real people's lives.